It is recording.
So, Mr. Coombs, where were you on June 4th, 1989? What were you doing?
Well, it was my first year back in Hong Kong after having been in the States for 4 years. So it was I was my first year at HKIS, actually, 88, 89. So we were in school still, and but I do remember hearing about it, and everybody was quite upset. The news kept coming in. At first, there were huge distortions in the amount of people that were killed. Some people were saying 7,000 to 10,000 people had been killed, and so there was a lot of exaggeration. But we were still pretty shocked, and we had a lot of friends that were in Beijing at the time, and of course we didn't know what was going to happen in the capital. So we were just concerned, just like when you heard about 9/11, the same idea.
I was living in Florida. I was teaching English in a high school, IB English in a high school. Pretty far removed, although I'd lived in Asia before. I lived in Taiwan prior to that, so I was keenly interested in things Chinese. I remember the second question is about where was I and what happened, or how did I learn of it?
Yeah, what was your initial reaction when you first heard of the news?
I think, like most of the world, I was shocked.
Right.
There was a lot of hope involved with that when we saw the students taking such a courageous stand. I think everybody remembers the one student who stood in front of the tank and kept moving in front of the tank.
Of course.
That was really inspiring. And then absolutely shocked when it was suppressed so quickly and so brutally.
Well, my initial reaction was, first of all, I can't believe they were so stupid. I mean, Gorbachev had come to visit, and that was what the students had, anticipated, that with the Gorbachev visit, the world press would be there, and that this was a great opportunity to protest against corruption in the government, and there was a huge inflation at the time. So there were very legitimate demands, and the students were, of course, they had expanded their initial protest not only to include those issues, but also democracy as well. So, it was a broad-based rebellion. Well, again, the government used the word rebellion. It was simply a protest march. They turned it into a rebellion by reacting to it the way they did. Well, you have to understand, having lived in Hong Kong pretty much since, for a long time, 1988-89 destroyed any hopes of democracy in Hong Kong. The environment was so, don't forget, we became a safe haven for a lot of the people who escaped. So China just really got extremely conservative, and the whole joint declaration, the modest amount of democracy that the British tried to introduce before they left was canceled, and that was all in the context of June 4th. So for anybody living in Hong Kong, it was a big disappointment. I think if China had not had this reaction, this political rebellion, Hong Kong's probably present would be a much more democratic world than we are today.
All right, I see. Well, it's very obvious that China hasn't exactly responded fully to the incident. How do you feel that China should respond?
Honestly, I don't have an opinion about that.
Right.
In terms of what the government should do. There's been in other places in the world, things like truth and reconciliation hearings, like in South Africa, or public admissions of guilt, and I think those have some use, but I don't know how much really. So I don't really know what China should do other than to make sure it doesn't happen again.
I see.
But I don't. I support commemorating it. Last year on the 20th anniversary, I went down to Victoria Park with over 100,000 other people. To bear witness. I think that's important.
First thing they have to do is tell the truth. And I think that's pretty much, the cover-up was unbelievable. The haste in which the bodies were removed and the place was cleaned up. and the sanitization of the history of the incident. I think that's pretty much what people, I think, in the end will demand. I think, you know what they did with Chairman Mao, you know, the party eventually came out and said he was 70% good and 30% bad. And I think we need to do the same thing with Deng Xiaoping. If he was, in fact, the one who certainly contributed to the decision to go in and clear out the square, yeah, I think the government needs to be honest and clear up the distortions of the past descriptions of the incident. It's good for the families of the people who lost children in the rebellion. It would also be good for the country to just have an honest airing of what actually happened and to hopefully make sure that it doesn't happen again. I think that's the thing that was so astounding. You know, China had become such a modern country, and you know, modern methods of crowd control and things like that. You'd think they would have benefited from that experience and cleaned up the area much, you know, with much less bloodshed. It was unnecessary. It was probably counterproductive in the end. And like I said, from a person in Hong Kong's point of view, it was a disaster because it made political future for Hong Kong virtually frozen in time because of the incident. So I hope that China will, in fact, evolve and become a more, you know, more politically open society. That's the hope that, you know, as Chinese become more confident and as modernity certainly is deeply entrenched now, there's no reason really to, I mean, people, their livelihoods have improved. They don't want to jeopardize that. Of course, right now, of course, the Gini index in China is pretty high, and that's something that they have to watch as well, and the government seems to be on top of that.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Davis.